Hi, Diana Freik here. I'm the host of the Gooder Podcast, where I get to talk with the powerhouse women in the food, beverage, and wellness industries about their journeys to success and their insights on the market. This episode is brought to you by Retail Voodoo. Retail Voodoo is a brand development firm. Our clients include Starbucks, Kind, REI, PepsiCo, High-Key, and many other market leaders. We provide strategic brand, marketing, and design services for brands in these spaces. If your goal is to increase market share, drive growth, or disrupt the marketplace with new and innovative thinking, give us a call and let's talk. Or visit retailvoodoo.com. That's retail-voodoo.com. Well, I am very excited to introduce her formal name is Jessica, but we're going to call her Jess for today. Jess Akers, who is a global leader of commerce innovation at General Mills, the CPG giant and owner of some of the most loved food brands in the world. Her career has kept her on the forefront of change in the food industry through the rise of e-commerce and evolution of consumer expectations in the digital world. She is on a mission to enable more connected consumer experiences using agile marketing technology to learn at the pace and scale across the global business. Now, if we have a chance, because General Mills is a pretty big name, we might be able to talk about a couple of brand campaigns. I hope I got that right, Jess, that were done for Fiber One or Old El Paso, which Carter Jensen, who connected us, was a super fan of and is the reason why he reached out to me in the first place. So perhaps we can talk about that. And then I just want to thank Carter, like advocates like you. Thank you so much for raising and elevating women leaders like Jess in the marketplace. We need you in order to keep growing. Thank you. So welcome, Jess. How are you today?
Thanks so much. Very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
And thanks also to Carter, as you said. It's so great to get the chance to speak to you today.
Yeah. So tell us where you are located right now.
So I'm based in London. I'm part of the General Mills organization, which most people probably know, big global food company. So I'm in a global role. So I'm based in London, but okay. I'm part of an organization which is based out of the US.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's talk about that. This first question, I kind of feel funny asking this of multinationals, so well known, but I'm going to ask it anyways for some consistency. Tell us a little bit about General Mills and what is General Mills up to these days? Kind of in the, we could spend hours on that, but kind of in a bigger picture.
Of course, yeah. So, I mean, most people know General Mills for its brands, loads of really famous brands in the US, from Cheerios, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Lucky Charms. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of massive global brands as well, Old El Paso, Betty Crocker, Nature Valley, I could go on. So loads of really interesting brands to be working on, a real mix there. And yeah, General Mills, I think there's a lot going on at the moment, as with most manufacturers, I think, in the food industry. I feel like this is probably one of the most interesting times in good and bad ways to be in this space. So a lot of opportunity, a lot of change, and also a lot of difficulty. So yeah, interesting place to be, and a really interesting place to be learning at the moment.
Well, that makes it doubly so when we're going to talk about your title, Global Ecom Innovation Manager. So for the rest of us, what does that mean? What do you do within General Mills?
So we're a small, lean team, which we sit centrally in the organization. And our role really is to be sort of owning what's next in the commerce space. Mm-hmm. So whether that's e-commerce or what we're referring to these days as sort of more connected commerce experiences, which you sort of go from our traditional marketing and brand experiences and trying to connect that with opportunities to purchase. Mm-hmm. So we're really trying to trailblaze in the space and help the rest of the business find those things that are going to unlock growth in the future, which is an awesome place to be.
Yes, that is wonderful. So now this role is very interesting, and you have been with General Mills for 8-9 years now, and prior to that had a little bit, had a few other roles. I'm curious of your path into this role. I don't know if you created it or if you were brought into it, but I would love to know, like, what takes somebody from land securities to e-com?
Yeah, of course. Most of my career has been at General Mills, which has been brilliant. So many opportunities in such a big organization. I've done some internships and some other roles before, which were in sort of very different industries, but ultimately sort of led me into CPG through studying French, actually, university French and business.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, because my first job was in our yacht play business, which is obviously yogurt based out of France. So it had to be a French-speaking role. I was doing a lot of product innovation, which meant I was very connected to our factories and our teams that were based out of France. So that was sort of my and a really interesting sort of start to a career in CPG, starting in marketing and sort of consumer insights, sort of leading to new product development, which was a really cool insight into food. I got to go to some of the factories, which, if anyone has a chance to ever go to a food factory, I would recommend it.
Yes.
Cool.
Oh, yes. Probably my funnest of all the jobs when we're working on brands. My favorite is to be on the floor and just see the magic.
It's incredible, the scale and the technical expertise that's involved. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, that was sort of my entry point. And then I've taken several different sort of opportunities within the business. I've worked in our sales organization. I've worked for several years in e-commerce, specifically at a really interesting time when it was really taking off from being a really, really tiny portion of our business to something much more significant.
That's the truth.
Yeah, exactly. I was there launching our Amazon business, working with some sort of pure players in the UK, and I also led our e-commerce business in Australia for a couple of years as well. And yeah, sort of that experience, I suppose, positioned me well to take on this really new and exciting role, which was very newly created, with a focus on the future and what's next, and having that kind of global visibility to make sure that we can capture all the learnings and all the opportunities and scale them as appropriate across the globe.
I love it. Well, let's talk a little bit about the role then. I know when you and I were preparing, we talked about some things that were important for you and that you thought would be really great for our listeners to listen to. I want to talk about the changing world of multinationals like General Mills. E-com, as you said, very interesting time to be in e-com, has become a very important channel in the last several years. And I would love to hear from you the purpose of commerce innovation within your organization, at least as much as you can share.
Yeah, of course. So I mean, the true purpose of our team, and it's really sort of, we split it into two main areas. One is accelerating today. So it's making sure that all of our brands have the capabilities and the technologies that they need to take advantage of every opportunity that there is in the digital space, e-commerce, and connected to our brand experiences. So that's a massive focus, just to make sure that we can enable as much use and adoption of those tools as possible. And then the second pillar is around owning tomorrow, and that's where we really focus on the future, on innovation, and do a lot of research and have conversations with some really, really interesting people to try and plan for what's next and get ahead of that, so that we have some control over that in the future,
or at least be prepared for it. I am curious, inquiring minds, I wonder, are you guys looking at virtual environments like the metaverse? Is that something on your radar that you guys are actively thinking around?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely one of our focus areas, and it's such an interesting space, constantly changing, and so much to learn. So yeah, that's been something we've all been upskilling ourselves on, and connecting with people and great experts so that we can learn more, and basically have the intention of setting a strategy or some guidance for the total business and what that might look like. So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff to come. I think the world will be a bit of a different place in even a few years from now.
Yeah, I can imagine, just with the rate of change in the last 2 years. 2 years from now, I don't think we will recognize. We're all accustomed to change at this point and at fast rates, hey?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be very exciting to see what's possible in that short space of time. There's probably never been a point where so much has changed so quickly.
I agree. Well, so talking about changing landscapes, traditionally multinationals have been slow movers when it comes to innovation, whether it's on product or technology, operations, et cetera. But as you've mentioned, things are changing, especially at General Mills. Can you talk about fast learning in your organization and how it's impacting how you build brands right now?
Yeah, of course. So you're right. I mean, big organizations are big beasts, right? Big ship to turn. Takes a lot with a lot of different people who are, experts in their fields. But aligning that and getting everyone on board can be a challenge, and that's an advantage that smaller businesses have to move at pace. So that's something that we've seen, and we've looked to small and digitally native brands and thought, what can we learn from them? So we've tried to build some tools, and really excited to talk about that a little bit. Some tools which enable us to really act like a startup, act like a direct to consumer brand, for example, where we can do things on a really small scale for very, very little cost, and very quickly. And then we can really learn, and we can scale those things up if they work. But we fail a lot as well, and that's okay. That's part of the process. I think if we weren't failing, then we wouldn't be doing enough risky and dangerous or interesting things. So that's our approach, and I think the team that I'm in have been really focused on enabling that approach for the rest of our business. We have some amazing brand experience teams across the organization who really own what the brands are doing, but what we're trying to do is give them the tools so that they can do things quickly and learn and make sure that it's perfect for their consumers, perfect for their audience, and make it as good as it can be.
Well, so what I'm hearing is there has definitely been a cultural shift, right? Because failing is, most orgs your size are risk averse, some more than others, but risk usually because the investment in risk tends to be much bigger. So it sounds like if you're adopting some of these entrepreneurial concepts and scaling things down and moving more quickly, the failures don't feel so big. I don't know what the right word is, but am I catching, is that what's happening, or is it, I guess that's my question. Yeah.
I mean, I think failing smart is kind of how I think about it, because if you fail but you don't learn anything, then that doesn't help anyone. But if you fail and you have some parameters around how much you're investing, the information or the data that you're going to get from that experiment, then even if you do fail, it doesn't matter, because you've got learnings, and that's what's important at the end of the day. So I think going about it in the right way means that it can't really be a failure. It's only going to be an advantage in the long run.
Yeah, good. That's wonderful. And in this ecosystem, of course, we cannot forget our consumers. How do you see the ecosystem of consumer to brand and brand to consumer impacting the way you plan the connected commerce experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like so much has changed in that space. When I think about it as a consumer myself, or from what I've seen working, in the food industry, I think the point of discovery to the point of purchase is closer than it's ever been before. I mean, I think gone are the days where it's discovering products in the supermarket is the main place that people do that. Right? I mean, it's the ability to go from a discovery, say on a social platform, to adding to your basket in one click has just completely collapsed that funnel. And I think that's so interesting. And there's so many opportunities that brands kind of need to take advantage of when those are the expectations of consumers these days. A few clicks is going to be too many to get that conversion.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's really changed.
Do you have an example where you have applied that thinking to one of your brands and saw an increase in sales?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a really amazing enabler of social commerce, which is one of the most interesting, I think, direct routes to purchase these days is having a sort of direct to consumer technology. And I'll talk a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people think direct to consumer is a channel to sell products, ship a box from the company to the end consumer. But we think about it a little bit differently at General Mills, and we sort of have three categories of how to approach it. So we do direct to consumer to learn, which is sort of small scale experiments where we launch new products. We get direct feedback from consumers, which is just a super interesting use of that technology. Then we do brand experiences through direct to consumer, and that's where I think the social commerce unlock is so interesting. For example, our team in the US with Cinnamon Toast Crunch, they built a TikTok storefront using a Shopify direct-to-consumer integration, which meant that they could sell merchandise, so hoodies and t-shirts and things like that, which are discoverable on TikTok. Really, really cool experience and a really easy checkout. So that kind of brand engagement is such an interesting use of the kind of technology and agile marketing technology that we're helping the organization to adopt.
Interesting. I like that. Okay. So much there, and you cover so much territory. Is your team responsible for all the brands within General Mills?
So I'd say we're not responsible for all the brands, but we work completely across the business. So we'll partner with any team who wants to work with us, basically, who needs support with this. We have some amazing allies who we work with a lot, and we're always trying to socialize our work and see who wants to engage with us so that we can spread those learnings further.
Interesting. Okay, thank you for that. Wow. So lots of innovation. You guys are constantly moving, a million moving parts, literally and figuratively. That is super interesting to hear, and it makes me feel good to see that the adoption rate is just accelerated to the point where we're moving as fast as the little guys, so to speak. I think that's going to be great for consumers at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's definitely the intention. I think if a brand can have the tools to not only do it quickly and cheaply, but be able to react to the market, I think that's such an advantage that small brands have when they have fast decision making, simpler processes. That's an advantage to get things out the door in front of consumers. So if our tools can help brands to act more quickly, then that's going to end up with better experiences for our consumers.
Agreed.
I think reactive marketing is so important these days, but to sort of connect with consumers and seem relevant. I think that's part of what we're trying to help the brands with as well.
The strategic proactive and strategic reactive working together is that ecosystem that we talked about earlier. Hey?
Yeah, that's right.
Love it. Wow. Wonderful. So I'm curious, as you look back in the time that you've been with General Mills so far, or maybe this could be even outside of General Mills, but I'm curious, what milestones or what moment are you most proud of? You may have more than one, but
yeah. So I feel like this current role is probably the most excited I've ever been to be working at General Mills. Always exciting to be at the forefront of what's happening next. I think a great milestone sort of for me personally was moving internationally to work in a different market. It was such a learning curve to sort of connect with different retailers and learn the different dynamics of the market, find out what's important to consumers there. So yeah, my move to Australia was a really exciting point in my career and taught me a lot as well.
Wow. Yeah. So, this ties into the next question that I was going to ask. But I'm going to ask this one first, and that is, there are many people that work on global brands, or their brands go international, or however you might look at it. It sounds to me like it's not the same as literally picking up and moving into another market and learning the brand from that location. Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, our brands are, we have a lot of brands that are
Yeah.
worldwide,
Yeah.
but there are some really interesting differences, actually. I mean, if you take Old El Paso, for example, in the UK, it's all about fajitas. Everyone loves fajitas, and that's the focus of the brand. That's what the Fajita Friday is a huge activation campaign. But in the US or in Australia, it's all about tacos. I mean, actually, the US is probably a bit more
Isn't that funny?
interesting. But yeah, I think there are small differences like that, but also just in how consumers sort of engage with your brands and how they think about them, how they use them. I think that's
Sure.
always interesting to see how culture affects the sort of the perception of a brand or its position.
And I wonder if just even being in the environment with people who are native to the country gives you a different perspective that you might not otherwise have.
Yeah,
Possible?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just thinking, with everybody being remote, and being virtual, I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, do we lose the opportunity working for a global brand if we don't physically pick up and move? Do we lose some learning opportunity simply because it's easier to work from where you are do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah,
Like,
I guess so. I mean, there's probably things that we miss by not being sort of physically in contact or exposed to a brand in a certain market, but probably goes the other way as well.
yeah, that's
We're
true.
able to experience brands that we're not close to,
Yeah.
and the digital world makes that feel very real, even if it's not, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, and in particular, if somebody's interested in being in the U.S. market and they're based out of Australia and you are in the U.S., there's probably some benefits to that, the way you think. So I could see it both ways. Okay. So what advice would you give, or do you find yourself giving people who might be following in your footsteps?
So I would definitely say to grab every opportunity that comes your way. And find some amazing allies. I've been really fortunate to have some brilliant leaders and mentors who have really pushed me to think more broadly than I would have done earlier in my career. I think a lot of people would probably say a similar thing, that even if you're not completely clear on what you want next, if someone can help you see what options are and help you to get there, that's such a gift. So I'm very grateful to people who've helped me with that all along the way. Yeah, and I just stay curious, keep looking, keep pushing forwards, and never think that, oh, that's just how we do things around here, it won't change. I think things can change even when they seem like they can't. So just having sort of the energy and the sort of inspiration to do that.
Absolutely. Well, what's next for you, or what are you working on next, or General Mills? There's a lot of ways we can ask the what's next question.
Yeah, so I mean, there's loads of exciting stuff on the pad, and I probably can't talk to all of it, but we're really excited about where all of the sort of technology unlocks that we've leveraged so far can take us. I think the sort of agile approach has enabled a lot so far, but we don't stop there. We're sort of looking at some proprietary technology that can sort of take us even further into helping our brands connect with consumers, which is very exciting. It's a really interesting place to be.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Jess, I have really enjoyed our conversation and our planning up until this point. Our time is almost up, but I do have a couple of questions I like to ask everybody. And the first one is, are there any other women leaders or rising stars out there that in our industry or not that you would like to elevate or simply admire for the work that they're doing right now?
It's a good question and a tricky one. I feel like there are so many good answers to that. Always pressure to have a great answer. I mean, I would say there are a lot of people that I've worked with directly who I admire so much. Without sounding too sort of brown nosing, I
Mhm.
would say that Dana McNabb leads our strategy and growth segment at General Mills, and has always been a bit of an inspiration to me in just how she approaches business and life, and how she treats the people around her. I think is she's a pretty amazing female role model for a lot of people at General Mills across the world. So
Mhm.
would definitely recognize her as a response there. I was trying to think more outside as well. I remember being really influenced actually when I was earlier in my career, hearing a woman called Henrietta Morrison speak, and she was the founder of a brand called Lily's Kitchen, which is a pet
Okay.
food brand.
Oh.
And it was her story was just so brilliantly told, from sort of her personal experience and creating the food for her dog at home, and the journey that she went on to take that brand to amazing heights. That always stuck with me. I think I've always had a little bit of aspiration to start a business or do something entrepreneurial like that. So I have a lot of respect for people who have the courage. I think it's amazing, and a lot of the people that you speak to on this podcast have been there. So kudos to all
Yeah.
of them.
Yes. Well, I say 50% of our clients are entrepreneurial, and the other 50%, of course, are mid to multi. And what is always inspiring to me when I'm listening to these people is there's risk, and then there's risk where you put it all on the table. And man, that just takes something. That takes a passion and a power to believe, and the hard and really hard work. But the magic they create is pretty spectacular. Don't you agree?
Agree. And I think that comes through. I think that's what makes some brands, is the story and the passion that goes into it.
Yeah.
Obviously alongside the rest, but
Yeah.
it's very inspiring.
Yes. Well, so then along that route, I'm curious, what brands or trends do you keep your eye on, and why?
I mean, trends are so interesting. I am
Right.
really intrigued by live streaming and live shopping, which
Okay.
is such a big thing in the Asian markets and across the world. So I think keeping an eye on how that develops. I know a lot of brands haven't seen the success that they expected yet in North America or in Europe, but I wonder what will be the thing that makes that effective in the end. I mean, and we've talked as well about the metaverse and Web3 generally, and how that's going to change, how people experience brands and engage. So I think that's a really interesting space to watch as well.
Ooh, Web3. I don't know where I've been sleeping, but I have not heard that, or it hasn't stuck. Thank you for that.
Web3, everything with the metaverse, cryptocurrency, and beyond.
Thank you. Yay, I learned my one thing for today. I can go back home. Okay. All right. Well, my goodness, we have been talking with Jess Akers, global e-commerce. Let me say that again. We've been talking with Jess Akers, global e-commerce innovation manager at General Mills. Jess, where can people learn more about you and maybe some of the work that you're up to?
Of course, everyone is welcome to find me on LinkedIn. Sorry, let me say that again. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jessica Akers, and you can feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm always happy to chat or learn any more about the kind of things we've been working on at General Mills.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I know it's getting on to be the end of your day, and it'll be good to go home or just relax from your work day. I'm so happy to have spent time with you, and really look forward to seeing what you're up to next.
Thank you so much for the time. It's great to speak to you.
Of course. And thank you, listeners, for your time today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time on the Gooder Podcast.
Produced by Heartcast Media.